Step back in time, far beyond the hum of modern life, to a world where the very idea of bathing carried a weight of mystery, caution, and ritual. Imagine the cold stone walls of a medieval castle, the faint flicker of torchlight casting long shadows across tapestries, and the heavy scent of wood smoke mingling with the earthy aroma of daily life. In such a world, water was not simply a resource for cleanliness, it was precious, scarce, and sometimes feared. Nobles, with all their wealth and power, approached bathing in ways that may seem strange, even shocking to us now. Yet, in their time, these practices were not mere eccentricities. They were deliberate choices, shaped by culture, health beliefs, and social expectations. The streets outside the castle echoed with the sounds of daily labor, merchants calling out their wares, the clatter of horses' hooves on cobblestones, and the distant laughter of children playing in the courtyards. Amidst this bustling life, the aristocrats within their fortified walls followed their own world of ritual and restraint. Unlike today, where cleanliness is often immediate and private, the act of washing was a deliberate event, a moment of ceremony, sometimes elaborate, sometimes restrained, but always laden with meaning. Noble bathing was not simply about removing dirt, it was about demonstrating refinement, controlling the senses, and negotiating the complex fears and expectations of a society that viewed water with ambivalence. In our modern minds, the word medieval may conjure images of filth, grime, and perpetual stench. Popular culture often tells us that these people never bathed, that they wallowed in foulness by default. Yet, the reality is far more intricate, more fascinating, and in many ways, more human. Nobles did bathe, but they did so under constraints that combined superstition, medicinal advice, and the desire for social display. They understood water not only as a source of cleansing, but also as a potential threat. Too much exposure could invite illness, too little might signal neglect. These tensions gave rise to habits that, to our eyes, appear curious or bizarre. Consider the castle's private bathing chamber, a room designed for comfort and privacy. Wooden tubs, sometimes lined with heated water, awaited the noble occupant. The air was scented with herbs, rose petals, or lavender, each fragrance chosen with care to mask odors, soothe the senses, and evoke refinement. Attendants stood nearby, ready to assist with towels, oils, and brushes, executing a choreography that combined practicality with subtle artistry. Even the temperature of the water, the sequence of washing, and the use of scented cloths carried meaning. This was not mere hygiene, it was theater, an intimate ritual, and a reflection of status, all at once. Outside these chambers, life continued unabated. The sounds of market squares, the smell of smoke from kitchens, and the clamoring of animals created a sensory contrast that made the noble bath feel like a rare, almost sacred retreat. The common people, who often bathed in public rivers or communal baths, navigated a very different world, one where bathing was more practical than ceremonial. By comparing these lives, we begin to see the layers of medieval thought: fear versus necessity, status versus survival, indulgence versus restraint. This contrast sets the stage for understanding why noble bathing habits were so peculiar, and yet so deeply logical within their context. In these opening moments of our exploration, allow your mind to wander gently through the corridors of history. Imagine the flicker of candlelight on polished wood, the whisper of servants' footsteps on stone floors, the faint warmth of water infused with calming scents. Feel the sense of ceremony, of deliberation, and of care that surrounded every bath. Even the smallest details, a silk towel, a carefully chosen oil, a moment to inhale fragrance, contributed to an experience that was as much about the mind and the senses as it was about the body. By setting this scene, we begin to understand that medieval bathing was never a simple act. It was a reflection of a world in which every behavior carried significance, every ritual conveyed meaning, and every choice balanced fear and desire. It was a practice that intertwined hygiene, health, social signaling, and even moral judgment. As we move forward, we will uncover the full spectrum of these habits, from fragrant rituals to the avoidance of water, from the role of physicians' advice to the eccentricities of famous nobles. And so, as your mind drifts along this story, imagine yourself quietly observing this distant past. The air is thick with warmth and scent, the stones beneath your feet cool and solid. The world of medieval nobles opens before you, a world of beauty, caution, and curiosity, a world that is at once strange and profoundly human. In the stillness of these moments, you can feel the rhythms of life long ago, preparing you to journey deeper into the strange, fascinating, and often surprising bathing habits of the people who once walked these castle halls.
When we imagine medieval life, the first image that often comes to mind is one of filth streets layered with mud, livestock wandering freely, and people who never bathed, their clothes heavy with grime. This image has become a staple of popular imagination, repeated in books, films, and casual conversation. Yet historians and archaeologists have painted a far more nuanced picture. In truth, hygiene in the Middle Ages was a matter of balance, of practicality, and of cultural belief, rather than simple neglect. Nobles and commoners alike understood the importance of cleanliness, but their approaches, resources, and fears shaped habits that seem unusual to our modern eyes. The truth about medieval hygiene begins with an understanding of context. Unlike our world, where clean water is often taken for granted, medieval towns and castles faced constant challenges. Wells could be polluted, rivers could carry disease, and transportation of fresh water was labor-intensive. Bathing, therefore, was not merely a matter of preference, it was a carefully considered act. To enter a bath was to weigh the benefits of cleanliness against the potential risks. Was the water truly safe? Could a sudden chill or dampness invite illness? Such questions were central to the way medieval people approached hygiene. Public perception adds another layer to the story. Many medieval texts and chroniclers describe communal baths, rivers, and even seasonal bathing festivals. Noble families might maintain private tubs or bathing chambers, but for ordinary townspeople, bathing often took place in public spaces or natural bodies of water. These baths were not always leisurely or indulgent, they were practical, social, and sometimes ceremonial, forming an essential part of community life. And yet, despite their prevalence over time, these baths acquired a reputation for danger and immorality. Crowded, steamy, and often unsanitary, they became associated with disease, gossip, and moral corruption, especially as plagues and epidemics spread through urban centers. This tension between practical cleanliness and perceived danger influenced noble behavior profoundly. Whereas modern society assumes that frequent bathing is inherently healthy, medieval elites were guided by different principles. Physicians and herbalists advised moderation, warning against the overuse of water, which could disturb the body's balance of humors, the fluids believed to govern health and temperament. Too much immersion could weaken the body, they argued, allowing cold, damp, or disease to enter. In this framework, a carefully controlled, occasional bath was far more rational than daily washing. Nobles were not unclean, they were cautious, deliberate, and attentive to contemporary medical thought. Yet, even with these considerations, the image of the stinking noble persisted, largely because of the way history was later written. Chroniclers, satirists, and moralists often exaggerated habits for dramatic effect, portraying nobles as decadent, lazy, or ignorant. Popular imagination, fueled by centuries of storytelling, conflated rarity of bathing with total neglect. In reality, nobles maintained routines of hand-washing, face cleaning, and selective bathing, often supplemented with scented powders, oils, and perfumes. These practices were designed not only to preserve personal hygiene, but also to signal refinement, status, and adherence to social expectations. It is important to consider the sensory experience of medieval hygiene to appreciate the nuance fully. Imagine a noblewoman or nobleman in a private chamber, cloth scented with herbs, brushing the skin, fragrant oils massaged carefully into the hair and body. Even without full immersion in water, this ritual left an impression of cleanliness and luxury. Attendants moved quietly, anticipating every need, and the room itself was prepared to enhance comfort, warmth, and fragrance. In this environment, bathing was as much about maintaining dignity and elegance as it was about physical cleanliness. Contrast this with the reality of public spaces. Medieval bathhouses were hubs of social interaction, where strangers mingled, tradespeople gathered, and rumors spread as freely as steam from hot tubs. While these baths could be places of refreshment and relaxation, they also carried risks. Disease spread easily in crowded, poorly maintained facilities, and moral authorities sometimes condemned such gatherings. For nobles, avoidance of public baths became not a sign of neglect, but a practical measure to preserve health, privacy, and social standing. The medieval hygiene myth also obscures an important truth. Cleanliness, in various forms, was culturally valued. Hand washing before meals, face cleansing, and the use of fragrant powders were common among both nobles and townspeople. Even ritual baths tied to religious observances underscored the significance of purification, linking the physical act of washing with spiritual practice. To view medieval people as uniformly filthy is to ignore the cultural and symbolic dimensions of their hygiene practices and to miss the intricate ways in which water, scent, and ritual intersected with social life. Historical records and archaeological evidence further challenge the myth. Excavations of castle chambers, bathhouse remnants, and personal items like combs, brushes, and scented containers reveal a society attentive to grooming and hygiene. Written accounts describe detailed bathing ceremonies, seasonal rituals, and medicinal advice regarding water use. These sources consistently show that cleanliness was neither ignored nor despised. It was adapted to the realities of the time, carefully negotiated within social, cultural, and environmental constraints. In unraveling the medieval hygiene myth, we begin to see a broader pattern: the tension between perception and practice. Outsiders, historians, and storytellers often emphasize what seems strange or illogical, overshadowing the careful logic that guided daily life. Nobles did not avoid bathing out of laziness or ignorance. They acted according to a complex set of beliefs about health, morality, and social status. Recognizing this nuance allows us to approach their habits with both curiosity and empathy, reframing what might seem bizarre into a story of human ingenuity and adaptation. As you let these ideas settle, imagine wandering through a medieval city or castle, observing the care and caution with which people approached water. Picture the faint scent of herbs, the soft movement of attendants, the quiet moments of ritual that punctuated daily life. Feel the subtle rhythm of a society that balanced cleanliness, health, and status, even in an environment far removed from our modern comforts. By exploring this tension between myth and reality, we prepare ourselves to delve deeper into the bathing rituals of the elite, to uncover the beauty, complexity, and at times the strangeness of their practices. This understanding, gentle and measured, sets the stage for the next layers of our story, revealing the ways in which noble bathing habits intertwined with luxury, power, and the intricate dance of medieval social life. In medieval society, cleanliness was never merely a personal concern. It was an emblem of social distinction, a signal to others of wealth, refinement, and influence. Among nobles, bathing became a ritualized marker of status, a demonstration of the resources and leisure that set the elite apart from commoners. To understand this, we must leave behind our modern assumptions about hygiene and enter a world in which water, heat, scent, and ceremony were carefully orchestrated to create experiences of luxury and power. Imagine a castle chamber, spacious and lofty, warmed by a roaring hearth, and lined with tapestries that muted the chill of stone walls. A nobleman, or perhaps a noblewoman, prepares to bathe. Wooden tubs, often reinforced with metal bands, are filled with heated water, sometimes infused with fragrant herbs, petals, or oils. The act of bathing is not solitary. It involves a small retinue of attendants who carry towels, brushes, and scented cloths. Every movement is choreographed, every gesture deliberate. This is a performance of elegance as much as it is an act of hygiene. The senses are engaged. The warmth of the water, the soft brush of linens, the faint, lingering aroma of lavender, rose, or rosemary. Such ceremonies were not merely indulgent. They were essential to the projection of status. Nobles lived in a world where appearance, ritual, and perception were intertwined with power. To be seen, or even rumored, to neglect personal care could invite criticism, gossip, or loss of prestige. Bathing, therefore, was not trivial. It was a disciplined practice that communicated refinement. Perfumes, oils, and powders were not substitutes for water alone. They were instruments of social signaling, asserting wealth, discernment, and cultural sophistication. The process itself was elaborate and sensory. Water temperature mattered, often carefully regulated with heated stones or fire-warmed baths. Attendants, often family, retainers or trusted servants, helped to ensure that every aspect of the ritual proceeded smoothly. Linen towels, soft and carefully laundered, awaited the noble. Fragrant oils were applied to skin and hair, enhancing both appearance and olfactory presence. Sometimes, ceremonial powders or scented gloves were incorporated, each item selected for its rarity, fragrance or symbolic significance. Through these layered rituals, bathing became an art form, a demonstration of control over the senses, environment and body. It is important to recognize that this emphasis on ritualized bathing was also shaped by cultural beliefs. Medical advice of the era often cautioned against overexposure to water, suggesting that too frequent bathing could disturb the body's humors. By integrating scented oils, powders, and partial washes, nobles could maintain an appearance of cleanliness and refinement without violating prevailing medical guidance. In essence, their luxurious rituals allowed them to balance health concerns with the expectations of courtly life, transforming hygiene into a complex interplay of science, fashion, and psychology. The contrast with common life was striking. For peasants and artisans, bathing was simpler, more utilitarian, and often constrained by access to water or heated spaces. Public bathhouses and rivers offered necessary cleansing but lacked the privacy, scent, and ceremonial focus that distinguished noble practices. In this contrast, bathing as status becomes clear. It was not simply about removing dirt, but about constructing an identity, asserting social hierarchy, and demonstrating mastery over environment and circumstance. Nobles were able to convert an ordinary human need into a ritual of privilege, a sensory experience that reinforced power, distinction, and refinement. Moreover, bathing rituals often extended beyond the individual to encompass communal or social dimensions. Invitations to witness, attend, or assist in noble baths were subtle expressions of favor, loyalty, or political positioning. The careful selection of fragrances, heated water, and lavish towels became a silent language of influence. Nobles who invested time and resources into these rituals sent messages to their peers and subordinates. Wealth, care, and discernment were yours to command. Through the act of bathing, power was communicated without words, through the choreography of touch, scent, and environment. Historical records abound with descriptions of such luxurious practices. Chronicles recount the care with which queens prepared for bathing, the intricate arrangements of attendants and scented waters, and the attention to comfort and display. Kings were reported to have bath attendants on constant call, ensuring that every element of temperature, fragrance, and ritual aligned with expectations of dignity. Even in quieter, more private moments, the symbolism persisted. A bath was not only refreshment for the body, but nourishment for status and reputation. The sensory immersion in these rituals was profound. Imagine the sound of water gently lapping against wooden tubs, the faint rustle of embroidered robes as attendants moved softly around the chamber, the delicate aroma of herbs rising in the warm air. Visualize sunlight filtering through high windows, catching the shimmer of water and the sheen of perfumed skin. Each detail was deliberate, each element carefully controlled to produce an effect of elegance, calm, and power. In such moments, bathing transcended function and became an art, a theater of refinement. It is also worth noting that these practices reinforced personal identity and self-perception. Nobles were acutely aware that their presence in court or public events was a performance in itself. Bathing, grooming, and the use of scent were integral to shaping that presence. By attending to their bodies with precision and ceremony, they cultivated not only physical appearance but a psychological aura of control and distinction. In a society where perception often dictated influence, these rituals were indispensable tools of personal and political strategy. In contrast, the image of medieval nobles as filthy or neglectful collapses under scrutiny. Their hygiene practices, though different from modern norms, reveal a sophisticated understanding of the body, environment, and social expectation. Water alone was not enough. Ritual, fragrance, and careful timing elevated bathing from simple maintenance to an immersive experience of luxury, status, and subtle power. The strange habits that might appear extravagant or unusual to us were in fact coherent, deliberate, and deeply human. As your mind wanders through this world, imagine the tactile warmth of water on skin, the soft brush of linen, the faint floral scent of oils rising in the air. Feel the calm deliberation of a noble preparing for a bath, attended by those who respect and serve them, each gesture imbued with care and intention. Recognize the interplay of necessity, luxury, and social signaling that defines these rituals. This is a world in which bathing is not incidental but essential, a reflection of identity, status, and the art of living within the intricate structures of medieval nobility. By understanding bathing as status, we begin to see the broader patterns that shaped noble life, the ways in which ordinary human needs became opportunities for ritual artistry and influence. From the warmth of scented waters to the careful choreography of attendants, bathing was transformed into a grand expression of social power. In the next sections we will explore the specific rituals, fragrances, and behaviors that defined these practices, revealing both the beauty and the strangeness of the medieval noble experience, and deepening our appreciation for a world that was as deliberate as it was sensual. For medieval nobles, bathing was far more than a functional act of cleansing. It was a carefully orchestrated ritual, a sensory experience that intertwined water, scent, and the delicate attention of attendants. To fully grasp the complexity of these practices, we must envision the space in which they occurred: private chambers, warm and secluded, often adorned with tapestries that softened sound and insulated against the chill of stone walls. Within these chambers, water became a medium of luxury and artistry, transformed by heat, fragrance, and meticulous attention into an experience that touched body and spirit alike. The preparation for a bath often began long before the noble entered the water. Attendants would ensure that tubs were clean, filled with water heated over a fire, and infused with aromatic herbs, flowers, or oils. Lavender, rose, rosemary, and sometimes more exotic scents transported the bather into a world of sensory indulgence, masking any natural odors and creating a gentle, calming atmosphere. The subtle interplay of fragrance and warmth was designed to soothe the body and mind, enhancing both the perception of cleanliness and the sense of comfort. In this way, the bath became a ritual of both physical and emotional refinement. Every step of the bathing process was deliberate. Nobles might begin by washing hands and faces, often using scented cloths or small amounts of water, before moving to partial or full immersion. Brushes made of soft fibers helped cleanse the skin, while oils were massaged in to nourish and perfume. Even the act of drying was carefully considered. Towels, sometimes lightly scented or embroidered, were applied in a precise order, ensuring that the skin remained warm and protected from drafts. These procedures were not haphazard. They were codified through tradition, personal preference, and guidance from attendants who understood both the technical and aesthetic aspects of the process. Perfume played an essential role in this ritual, often serving as a substitute for frequent bathing. Nobles applied oils and powders to their skin, hair, and clothing, creating a layered fragrance that lingered for hours. Scent was a marker of refinement, and its careful use signaled wealth and sophistication. Consider the application of rosewater to hands or lavender-scented powders to the hair, each chosen for both its aroma and symbolic associations. These practices allowed nobles to maintain an impression of cleanliness and elegance, even when full immersion in water was infrequent, harmonizing sensory pleasure with practical concerns about health. The choreography of attendants was a crucial element of the ritual. Skilled servants moved quietly around the chamber, providing towels, brushes, and scented cloths precisely when needed. Their presence was unobtrusive yet essential, ensuring that each stage of the bath proceeded smoothly. In some cases, attendants were family members or close retainers, trusted not only with the technical details but with the intimate knowledge of personal preferences. The result was a harmonious interplay of action, scent, and sound, creating an atmosphere of calm, luxury, and gentle care. Water itself was carefully managed to optimize comfort and effect. Heated stones or fires ensured a stable, pleasant temperature, preventing chills that were believed to compromise health. Herbs and petals infused the water with subtle fragrances and sometimes medicinal properties, reflecting the belief that bathing could support both physical well-being and spiritual balance. The water was not merely a medium for cleansing, it was a tool of sensory enrichment, a means of orchestrating an experience that combined comfort, beauty, and practical benefit. Even the smallest details contributed to the overall ritual. Towels, often carefully laundered and scented, cushioned the skin and preserved warmth. Brushes and combs were selected for their texture and quality. Bowls and pitchers, sometimes silver or brass, reflected the bather's status and added an element of visual elegance. Each element, though seemingly minor, reinforced the perception of refinement and order, transforming the bath into a holistic experience of luxury and care. Beyond the mechanics of washing and scent, the rituals carried symbolic significance. In a society deeply attuned to status and perception, these bathing practices communicated wealth, taste, and refinement to anyone who might observe or hear of them. Even private baths were imbued with meaning, reflecting the discipline and discernment of the bather. By integrating fragrance, temperature, and attentiveness, nobles created an environment that demonstrated mastery over the body and its surroundings, projecting an image of cultivated elegance that extended beyond the chamber walls. The aesthetic dimension of the bath was further enhanced by attention to light, sound, and spatial arrangement. Candles flickered gently, casting warm reflections on the water's surface and softening the contours of the room. The muffled sounds of attendants' movements and the gentle lap of water against the tub created a serene auditory environment, while tapestries and cushions ensured physical comfort. This orchestration of sensory elements contributed to the overall experience, making bathing an immersive ritual that engaged body, mind, and spirit. In addition to personal indulgence, these rituals had practical benefits aligned with contemporary medical understanding. Gentle cleansing removed surface oils and impurities, while scented oils and powders were believed to preserve skin health and protect against disease. The careful sequencing of washing, drying, and application of fragrances reflected a balance between indulgence and prudence, demonstrating that medieval bathing was as much about health as it was about luxury. Even limited immersion in water, complemented by oils and powders, provided a controlled and beneficial cleansing process. The ritualized nature of bathing also reinforced social hierarchy and etiquette. Nobles were served by attendants trained to anticipate needs and execute procedures with discretion and skill. This relationship emphasized trust, loyalty, and knowledge, ensuring that the act of bathing was conducted with dignity and respect. It also reinforced the social distance between elite and commoner, between those who could afford such luxuries and those for whom practical hygiene was constrained by resources and environment. As your mind drifts through this scene, imagine the gentle warmth of water, the soft touch of linen, the delicate fragrance of herbs rising in the air. Hear the quiet movement of attendants, the faint rustle of embroidered cloth, the soft splash of water against wood. Visualize the interplay of light and shadow, the shimmer of scented oils on skin, and the sense of calm that envelops the chamber. Every detail contributes to an experience that is simultaneously intimate, luxurious, and meticulously orchestrated, embodying both refinement and human care. Through these rituals of water and perfume, medieval nobles elevated bathing from a simple hygienic act to a complex performance of status, sensory pleasure, and controlled indulgence. The strangeness of these habits to modern eyes belies their coherence. They reflect a society that valued caution, beauty, and social signaling, creating an intricate balance between practical hygiene, sensory enjoyment, and the expression of power. In the next sections, we will explore how these rituals contrasted with public bathing, how medicinal beliefs influenced frequency, and how nobles adapted their practices according to season, health, and social context, deepening our understanding of the strange, fascinating, and richly human bathing habits of the medieval elite. Outside the privacy of castle walls, medieval life moved at a different rhythm. Public bathhouses, rivers, and natural springs were the primary venues for communal cleansing, offering spaces where ordinary people gathered to wash, socialize, and share news. These baths were vibrant, sensory places, alive with sound, movement, and scent. Steam rose from wooden tubs, mingling with the earthy aroma of mud, herbs, and sometimes smoke from nearby fires. Laughter and conversation echoed through the chambers, blending with the splash of water as townspeople immersed themselves, performing routines that were practical, social, and at times ceremonial. Yet despite the apparent vibrancy of these public spaces, many nobles increasingly chose to avoid them. The reasons were varied: concerns about disease, moral judgments, social distinctions, and simple preference for privacy all played a part. Crowded bathhouses, while practical for the common people, carried risks. Epidemics and outbreaks of illness were not uncommon, and water that was used by many could easily become a source of contamination. Nobles, with both the means and the motivation, often preferred controlled, private environments where water could be heated, infused with fragrances, and used in careful moderation. The decision to avoid public baths was also informed by perceptions of propriety and morality. Bathhouses could be sites of rumor, flirtation, and impropriety, attracting both fascination and censure. For nobles, attending a public bath could risk social embarrassment or misinterpretation, undermining the carefully cultivated image of refinement and dignity. Privacy, therefore, was a crucial aspect of maintaining both physical cleanliness and social respectability. A noble's bath was conducted in a chamber insulated from gossip and observation, attended by trusted servants who ensured discretion and care. Even within private spaces, the influence of public bathing traditions lingered. Nobles adopted some elements of communal practice: herbal infusions, soap alternatives, and bathing sequences, while adapting them to the comforts of private life. The sensory richness of public baths, with their heat, water, and scents, was recreated in miniature tubs filled with warm water, aromatic oils, and petals, attended by a small, loyal retinue. This adaptation allowed nobles to enjoy the benefits of bathing without the hazards or moral complications associated with public facilities. In addition to health and social concerns, practical considerations shaped these choices. Transporting and heating water was labor-intensive, and public facilities might be far from the castle or manor. Private bathing provided control over temperature, fragrance, and timing, ensuring that every detail aligned with the preferences of the noble occupant. The ritual could be leisurely or brief, depending on circumstance, but always maintained the careful balance between hygiene, comfort, and status. Sensory experience was central to this private avoidance of public spaces. Imagine the gentle hiss of heated water as it fills a wooden tub, the faint aroma of lavender or rosemary rising in the warm air, and the soft rustle of attendants moving quietly around the chamber. The visual harmony of polished wood, gleaming vessels, and arranged herbs creates a calming environment. Every element is deliberate, designed to engage the senses and elevate the act of bathing from necessity to ritual. This careful orchestration highlights the contrast between the controlled privacy of noble baths and the bustling energy of public facilities. Yet, avoidance of public baths was not absolute. Nobles occasionally participated in communal bathing, particularly during festivals, pilgrimages, or visits to spa towns renowned for their healing waters. In these contexts, public baths became both social and therapeutic spaces, blending leisure, health, and display. However, even then, nobles maintained a degree of separation, employing attendants, private chambers, and scented oils to preserve dignity and control. These excursions demonstrate that avoidance was a choice, nuanced and strategic, rather than an absolute rejection of communal bathing. Cultural and historical sources shed light on the shifting attitudes toward public baths. Chronicles, letters, and household accounts reveal a gradual decline in elite attendance at communal facilities, replaced by elaborate private rituals. Concerns about contagion, propriety and personal comfort all contributed to this trend. Nobles were attentive not only to their own well-being, but also to the perception of others, carefully negotiating the delicate balance between public appearance and private indulgence. The juxtaposition of public and private bathing also underscores the stratification of medieval society. Commoners, with limited access to private facilities, relied on rivers, springs and bathhouses, embracing communal practices that were practical, social and sensory. Nobles, in contrast, converted bathing into a personal, highly controlled experience, emphasizing discretion, luxury, and refinement. This contrast highlights the interplay of resources, risk and social signaling, revealing the ways in which hygiene was inseparable from status. As you imagine these scenes, picture a noble quietly observing the bustling activity of a public bathhouse from afar, aware of the heat, sound and movement, yet choosing the calm of a private chamber. The warmth of a controlled bath, the delicate scent of herbs, and the gentle presence of attendants create an environment of comfort and security. In these moments, the act of bathing becomes a sanctuary, a place of calm, control, and a reflection of social hierarchy. This careful separation of private and public practices also illustrates medieval approaches to health and well-being. While communal baths offered cleansing and social interaction, they also presented risks of disease, drafts and moral scrutiny. Private rituals mitigated these hazards, allowing nobles to maintain hygiene and health while preserving dignity. Through this lens, the avoidance of public baths appears not as neglect but as strategic adaptation, a sophisticated response to the realities of medieval life. Ultimately, the story of public baths and private avoidance reveals a society deeply attentive to context, perception, and sensory experience. Nobles transformed a necessary act into a deliberate, controlled, and meaningful ritual. By contrasting the vibrancy and chaos of public facilities with the calm, scented privacy of noble baths, we begin to understand the complexity and intentionality of medieval bathing practices. As your mind drifts along this narrative, imagine the soft sound of flowing water, the faint fragrance of herbs and flowers, and the serene quiet of a private chamber, insulated from the busy world outside. Feel the careful orchestration of attendants, the warmth of heated water, and the sense of calm control that defines the noble bathing experience. This contrast between public energy and private ritual prepares us to explore the next layer of medieval bathing habits, the influence of medicinal beliefs and the careful moderation of water. In the medieval world, health and hygiene were deeply intertwined, yet in ways that might seem unfamiliar to us today. Noble bathing habits were guided not only by social expectation or personal comfort, but also by contemporary medical beliefs that emphasized moderation, balance, and caution. The prevailing theory of humors, the delicate equilibrium of bodily fluids thought to govern temperament, health, and disease, shaped every decision about water, heat, and fragrance. Too much bathing, medieval physicians warned, could disturb this balance, opening the body to illness, chills, or moral corruption. To understand this perspective, we must imagine the body as a carefully regulated system, a vessel in which heat, moisture, and circulation must be carefully managed. Water, while cleansing, was also potentially dangerous. Sudden immersion could shock the system, especially if the bather's strength was weak or the air cool. Physicians advised that warm water used sparingly could invigorate the body, soothe muscles, and support humoral balance. Cold water, by contrast, was approached with caution, its potential to disrupt health both feared and respected. Bathing became an exercise in measured indulgence, a practice informed as much by prudence as by luxury. Attendants and family retainers were often tasked with implementing these medicinal guidelines. They monitored water temperature, ensured that bathing was neither too frequent nor prolonged, and applied scented oils and powders in ways believed to support well-being. Every gesture carried both practical and therapeutic significance. The layering of rituals, partial washes, scented applications, controlled immersion, allowed nobles to experience the sensory richness of bathing while remaining within the boundaries of medical advice. In this sense, hygiene was inseparable from health, and the bathing chamber became a space where body and mind were carefully tended. The The frequency of bathing varied according to season, temperament, and prevailing health conditions. Warm months might allow for more frequent immersion, while winter required greater caution. Physicians might recommend bathing once a week or even less, depending on the individual's constitution. Nobles adhered to these guidelines with precision, balancing the desire for cleanliness, the allure of scent, and the constraints of medical theory. These choices, guided by observation and learned wisdom, ensured that bathing was not merely indulgence but a disciplined, health-conscious practice. Herbs, oils, and scented powders were more than luxury items. They were considered medicinal aids. Lavender, rosemary, and rosemary-infused oils were believed to strengthen the body and prevent disease. Rose petals were thought to purify and soothe. Application of these substances complemented bathing, allowing nobles to cleanse and nurture the body without overexposure to water. In this way, the sensory richness of the bath, its fragrance, warmth, and texture was fully integrated with contemporary understandings of health, creating a holistic experience that was both luxurious and prudent. Medical advice also intersected with moral and spiritual guidance. Excessive bathing was sometimes viewed as indulgent or even morally suspect, a distraction from spiritual and practical duties. Moderation was the ideal, aligning with broader cultural values that prized balance in all things. Nobles were taught to respect these principles, incorporating them into their routines with a careful awareness of both physical and social consequences. The bath was therefore a disciplined space, one in which comfort, health, and propriety coexisted in delicate harmony. The rituals associated with medicinal bathing were precise. A noble might begin with partial washing, focusing on hands, face, and feet, gradually introducing warm water to the body in a sequence believed to maintain humoral equilibrium. Oils and scented powders followed, applied with gentle care to preserve both health and fragrance. Attendants observed every step, ensuring that guidelines were followed while also adding touches of elegance, embroidered towels, scented cloths, and warmed vessels. The result was an immersive, health-conscious experience that engaged both body and senses. Even as the medical rationale may seem foreign today, the logic of these practices was coherent and deliberate. Nobles navigated a world in which exposure to water carried both benefit and risk, and where sensory and aesthetic elements were carefully integrated with health principles. By following these rituals, they could maintain cleanliness, reinforce status, and protect their bodies from perceived dangers, all while enjoying the luxury of scent, warmth, and attentive care. The seasonal dimension of these practices was equally important. Spring and summer offered opportunities for more frequent baths, as warmth and sun reduced the risk of chills and infection. Winter, however, required caution, with cold draughts and stone chambers threatening health. Nobles adapted their routines accordingly, incorporating heated water, warmed rooms, and aromatic additions to maintain comfort and safety. These seasonal adjustments reflected a sophisticated understanding of environment, body, and ritual, demonstrating that bathing was not arbitrary but highly considered. The relationship between water and medicine also extended to special treatments. Nobles sometimes added herbs believed to strengthen or purify, creating baths that were simultaneously therapeutic and indulgent. Infusions of rosemary, thyme, and other plants served both aromatic and medicinal purposes, offering relaxation, fragrance, and health benefits. These practices illustrate the holistic approach to bathing, a careful balance of sensory experience, medicinal guidance, and ritualized care. The act of immersion was transformed into a controlled multisensory procedure, combining health, beauty, and indulgence in ways that were deeply meaningful for the bather. Attendants trained in both service and knowledge of medicinal principles played a crucial role in ensuring that every bath maintained this balance. They monitored temperature, applied oils and powders, and observed the noble's response, adjusting procedures as needed. Their expertise ensured that the bath was not only pleasurable but also safe, reinforcing the connection between hygiene, health, and social practice. In this context, bathing became a collaborative, mindful activity, one in which body, mind, and attendants worked in concert to maintain equilibrium. As your mind drifts through these practices, imagine the gentle warmth of the water, the soft touch of scented cloths, and the delicate fragrance of herbs rising in the air. Feel the calm deliberation of attendants, the careful sequencing of immersion and cleansing, and the soothing rhythm of ritual. In this space, bathing is not hurried or superficial, it is deliberate, measured and aligned with principles of health, luxury and refinement. The humoral theory, the sensory enhancements and the attentive service combine to create an experience that is at once practical, indulgent and profoundly human. Through these medicinal beliefs we begin to understand why medieval nobles bathed less frequently than we might expect, and why their bathing habits appear strange from a modern perspective. What seems unusual is in fact a considered response to the challenges of the time: limited resources, disease risk, seasonal variation and social expectation. By framing bathing within the principles of humoral theory, medicinal guidance and sensory indulgence, nobles created practices that were coherent, rational and deeply meaningful. In the next sections we will explore how seasonal, ceremonial and partial baths further shape noble routines, how selective washing reinforced social identity, and how fragrances became sophisticated substitutes for water. This journey deepens our understanding of the intricate, deliberate and fascinating bathing habits of medieval elites, showing that every ritual was a balance of health, luxury and social meaning. Medieval noble bathing practices were deeply attuned to the rhythms of the year, shaped by both practical necessity and ritualized tradition. Seasonal changes dictated how, when and where a bath might occur, creating a nuanced pattern of hygiene that intertwined climate, health, and social expectation. In warm months, the luxury of bathing could be fully indulged. Water could be heated more easily, rooms were warmer, and outdoor fountains or spring-fed baths were accessible. In winter, by contrast, the cold stone walls of castles, the risk of draughts, and the limited heating options demanded caution, leading nobles to adapt their routines to protect health while maintaining the appearance of cleanliness. Spring and summer baths were often more frequent and immersive. Water could be drawn from wells or rivers, heated over fires, and infused with fragrant herbs and flowers that complemented the season. Roses, lavender, and rosemary were popular, creating an aromatic experience that engaged the senses and elevated bathing beyond mere practicality. Nobles might spend extended time in the tub, attended by servants who carefully applied oils and powders, massaged skin, and ensured warmth and comfort. The combination of fragrance, temperature, and tactile care created a profoundly luxurious and restorative ritual. Autumn signaled a gradual reduction in bathing frequency. Cooler temperatures made prolonged immersion risky, as exposure to cold could weaken the body and disturb humoral balance. Nobles compensated by emphasizing partial washes, scented powders, and oil applications that maintained hygiene and fragrance without the risks of full immersion. This seasonal adjustment reflects a sophisticated understanding of environmental influence on health, demonstrating that bathing was as much about prudence as it was about indulgence. Winter baths were rare and highly controlled. Nobles relied on heated chambers, warmed tubs, and meticulous planning to avoid chills and draughts. Sometimes bathing was limited to hand and face washing, or the application of oils and perfumes to the skin. Even in these reduced routines, attention to sensory experience persisted. Scented cloths, soft linens, and aromatic oils ensured that the ritual remained pleasurable and refined. The deliberate moderation of water, guided by both health concerns and comfort, illustrates how seasonal awareness shaped bathing habits. Ritual baths were another dimension of medieval hygiene, often tied to ceremonial, religious, or social occasions. These baths could mark events such as weddings, coronations, or holy days, blending physical cleansing with symbolic purification. Water was carefully prepared, sometimes infused with rare or symbolic herbs, and attendants conducted the ritual with a precision that emphasized both respect and grandeur. In these contexts, bathing was a public or semi-public display, a carefully choreographed intersection of hygiene, symbolism, and status. The sensory richness of ritual baths reinforced their ceremonial significance. Imagine a noble stepping into a warm, fragrant tub, surrounded by attendants, scented cloths, and glowing candles. The subtle aroma of rose or lavender fills the air, blending with the warmth of the water and the soft rustle of silk or linen. The environment is orchestrated to soothe and impress, creating an immersive experience that elevates the body, mind, and spirit. Through these rituals, bathing transcended function and became a form of artful performance. Seasonal bathing patterns also reflected practical concerns about disease and comfort. Cold, damp environments were understood to increase susceptibility to illness, while heated and controlled spaces were protective. Nobles adjusted their routines in response to environmental conditions, using herbs and oils to compensate for limited water use. These adaptations illustrate the interplay between sensory pleasure, health, and ritualized care, demonstrating that medieval bathing was a complex negotiation between necessity and indulgence. Partial baths were a common solution to seasonal constraints. Hands, faces, and feet were washed carefully, often with scented water or cloths, while oils and powders maintained fragrance and skin health. Even without full immersion, the ritual retained its ceremonial and sensory dimensions. Attendants were essential in ensuring that every detail was executed with precision, preserving the noble's comfort, dignity, and social image. The combination of partial washing, fragrant oils, and attentive service allowed bathing to remain a central part of life, even when full baths were impractical. Fragrance was particularly important during winter and periods of reduced bathing. Oils, powders, and scented cloths provided both hygiene and aesthetic pleasure, masking odors while signaling refinement and care. Nobles became skilled in the application of these materials, creating layered scents that persisted throughout the day. This emphasis on olfactory experience highlights the sophistication of medieval bathing practices. Even when water was scarce or risky, the sensory and social dimensions of hygiene were preserved. The timing of seasonal and ritual baths was deliberate. Nobles coordinated bathing with daily routines, social obligations, and ceremonial schedules, ensuring that the ritual enhanced well-being without interfering with other responsibilities. Morning or evening baths might be preferred depending on climate and circumstance, while festival or ceremonial baths were planned to align with broader social events. This careful integration reflects a culture in which hygiene, health, and status were deeply interconnected. As your mind envisions these practices, imagine the changing seasons reflected in every detail of the baths: the warm sun of summer, the crisp air of autumn, and the chill of winter, mitigated by heated rooms and scented oils. Picture attendants moving with quiet precision, adding petals, herbs, and towels at just the right moment, ensuring warmth, fragrance, and comfort. Feel the subtle rhythm of seasonal adjustment, the balance of indulgence and prudence, and the immersive sensory experience that transforms bathing into an art form. Through seasonal and ritual baths, we see the intelligence and intentionality of medieval hygiene. Every choice, frequency, temperature, fragrance, and attendant care was carefully calibrated to preserve health, signal status, and maintain comfort. The strange habits that appear unusual to modern eyes were coherent, thoughtful, and deeply human, reflecting a society in which water, scent, and ritual intersected with climate, medicine, and social expectation. In the next sections, we will examine the specialized tools, fragrances, and techniques that nobles used to maintain hygiene year-round, the interplay of fashion and function in personal care, and the fascinating ways in which these practices created an environment of controlled luxury and deliberate indulgence. In the luxurious world of medieval nobles, bathing was not merely a matter of water, it was a carefully orchestrated interplay of tools, fragrances, and techniques, each chosen with precision to ensure comfort, cleanliness, and social distinction. Every object in the bathing chamber was purposeful, transforming a simple act into a sensory and ritualistic experience. Wooden tubs, reinforced with iron bands, polished basins, and metal pitchers were not only functional but also symbols of refinement. Their quality reflected status, and their careful maintenance was a testament to the bather's wealth and discernment. Attendants were trained to use these tools with subtle expertise. Brushes, made from natural fibers, helped cleanse the skin without causing irritation, while combs smoothed hair, often enhanced with fragrant oils. Towels, carefully laundered and sometimes embroidered, provided warmth and softness, ensuring that each stage of the ritual was gentle and deliberate. Even the placement of these items was calculated: pitchers near the tub, oils within easy reach, scented cloths laid out in anticipation. The arrangement created an environment that combined efficiency, elegance, and sensory richness, transforming the bath into a choreographed performance. Fragrances were central to the bathing experience, serving both aesthetic and practical purposes. Essential oils, petals, and herbs were infused in water, applied directly to the skin, or pressed into cloths and towels. Lavender, rose, rosemary, and violets were common, while rarer and more exotic scents signaled wealth and refinement. The application of fragrance was meticulous. Oils were massaged in to nourish the skin, powders dusted over clothing and hair to maintain freshness, and scented cloths used to gently dab or wipe the body. Every detail contributed to a multi-layered olfactory experience, leaving the noble enveloped in subtle, enduring aromas. The techniques employed in bathing were highly specialized, often reflecting both personal preference and contemporary medical advice. Partial washes, careful timing, and sequence were all considered important. Hands, face, and feet were sometimes cleansed first, with the water gradually warming to full immersion. Oils were applied in layers, ensuring both nourishment and scent retention. Powders and perfumes complemented the water, allowing the bather to maintain an impression of cleanliness, even when full immersion was limited. These methods demonstrate that medieval hygiene was a complex synthesis of utility, luxury, and sensory engagement. Tools were also selected for symbolic and aesthetic effect. Bowls and pitchers made of polished metals reflected candlelight, enhancing the visual beauty of the bath. Wooden tubs, often finely crafted, conveyed strength and permanence, while embroidered towels and linens added tactile elegance. Even simple implements were elevated by careful craftsmanship and thoughtful placement. In this way, the environment of the bath itself became part of the ritual, a stage upon which cleanliness, status, and sensory pleasure were enacted. The application of oils and perfumes required skill and deliberation. Oils were often heated slightly to enhance absorption and fragrance, then massaged into the skin with gentle circular motions. Powders might be sprinkled onto hair or clothing, adding a protective layer while imparting subtle scent. Scented cloths were pressed or dabbed, sometimes infused with combinations of herbs or flowers, chosen for both aroma and symbolic meaning. Each technique reflected the bather's desire for elegance, the influence of medical or cosmetic theory, and the attention of skilled attendants. These practices also reflect the adaptation of bathing to social context and personal need. Attendants anticipated every requirement. Heated water maintained temperature, towels were ready at precise moments, oils were applied according to preference, and scented cloths were positioned for immediate use. This careful choreography ensured not only comfort and hygiene, but also the projection of status, demonstrating mastery over environment, body, and ritual. The bath, therefore, was as much an exercise in social signaling as it was in cleanliness. Fragrance and sensory detail played another subtle role, masking odors, enhancing perceived cleanliness, and reinforcing personal identity. Nobles invested in rare ingredients and carefully blended oils, creating signature scents that distinguished them within the court or social circle. The layering of fragrances combined with tactile techniques and controlled water use allowed nobles to maintain an enduring presence of refinement even in private spaces. In this way, tools and techniques were not merely practical, they were instruments of personal and social artistry. The interplay of touch, temperature, and scent created a calm, immersive environment. Imagine a noble's fingers gliding over warm, oiled skin, the faint scent of lavender and rose filling the chamber. Towels, soft and fragrant, press gently against the body, while attendants move with quiet precision, ensuring that every action is harmonious and measured. Metal pitchers gleam in candlelight as they pour warm water, petals drift on the surface, and the rhythmic sound of liquid flowing creates a serene auditory backdrop. Each element works together to create an atmosphere of calm indulgence and sensory delight. Bathing techniques were also informed by considerations of health and season. Warmth, gentle friction, and aromatic oils were used to support humoral balance, while careful sequencing of washing and drying minimized the risk of chills. Seasonal variations influenced the choice of herbs, frequency of immersion, and emphasis on partial versus full baths. Even the most subtle aspects, the timing of oil application, the layering of powders, or the positioning of towels, were guided by both practical and medical wisdom. In this way, the ritual of bathing remained attentive to both well-being and luxury. The refinement of these practices demonstrates the sophistication of medieval hygiene among the elite. While modern eyes may focus on the perceived strangeness or infrequency of noble bathing, the reality was a carefully calibrated system of tools, fragrances, and techniques designed to maximize comfort, health, and social distinction. Nobles created environments in which every sense was engaged, every movement deliberate, and every object purposeful. The bath was not a mere functional act, it was a comprehensive multi-sensory ritual. As your mind drifts through these scenes, envision the delicate textures of linen and wood, the subtle glow of polished metals, the gentle aroma of petals and oils, and the orchestrated movements of attendants. Hear the soft splashes of water, feel the warmth of the tub and the tender pressure of towels, and sense the rhythmic calm that pervades the chamber. Each tool, fragrance, and technique contributes to an immersive experience that is at once soothing, luxurious, and meticulously crafted. Through these carefully chosen implements and methods, medieval nobles elevated bathing to an art form that blended hygiene, comfort, health, and social symbolism. Every brushstroke, poured pitcher, dab of scented cloth, and stroke of oil conveyed both practical attention and deliberate artistry. The bath became a theatre of refinement, a sensory sanctuary, and a ritual of identity, demonstrating that even acts as simple as washing hands or immersing in water could be transformed into expressions of status, care, and human creativity. In the next sections, we will explore the cultural and social implications of these practices, including the influence of fashion, ceremonial display, and personal identity, deepening our understanding of how medieval bathing rituals combined luxury, hygiene, and human imagination into a coherent, fascinating tradition. The bathing in the medieval period was more than a private ritual. It was a subtle yet powerful instrument of personal identity and social display. Nobles understood that hygiene, scent, and appearance were deeply intertwined with status, perception, and fashion. Even within the privacy of a chamber, how one bathed, the scents applied, and the methods used signaled refinement, taste, and social position. In a society attuned to hierarchy, the deliberate orchestration of bathing became a form of personal branding, shaping how others perceived the individual's elegance, discipline, and care. Fashion and hygiene were inseparable. Clothing, undergarments, and hair were carefully managed in tandem with bathing rituals. Linen shirts, often changed daily, were lightly perfumed to maintain freshness, while hair, combed and oiled, reflected both cleanliness and adherence to contemporary aesthetics. Noble women sometimes infused their hair with subtle scents, braiding or arranging it to highlight both style and social sophistication. Men, too, used oils and powders to maintain a polished appearance, ensuring that every aspect of their presentation reinforced status and refinement. The visual display of cleanliness extended beyond the body itself. Attendants, trained in the subtleties of presentation, arranged towels, linens, and scented cloths with precision. The careful placement of these items demonstrated both order and wealth, signaling to any observer, though often imaginary, that the noble occupied a space of discipline and taste. Even the act of selecting fragrances was a social statement. Rarer oils and exotic herbs conveyed sophistication, while layered scents suggested careful thought and mastery of subtlety. Bathing also reinforced ritualized gestures of self-presentation. A noble might begin with gentle washing, followed by the application of oils and powders in a sequence designed to maximize comfort, fragrance, and visual appeal. The act was deliberate and measured, transforming hygiene into performance. Towels, warmed and sometimes embroidered, were draped in ways that enhanced the experience both tactilely and aesthetically. Every gesture contributed to a sense of controlled elegance, ensuring that the bather's identity was both maintained and celebrated. Scent became a critical medium for personal expression. Oils, powders, and scented cloths were carefully selected to create a signature aroma, one that could linger after bathing and communicate refinement even in the absence of water. Nobles developed preferences for particular combinations, rose and lavender, rosemary and violet, that reflected temperament, taste, and social signaling. This olfactory identity complemented clothing and grooming, establishing a multi-sensory signature that communicated status and individuality. Ceremony and display sometimes extended beyond the private chamber. During festivals, social gatherings, or visits from dignitaries, nobles might showcase their personal grooming and scent, demonstrating mastery over body, environment, and ritual. Even subtle indicators, such as the lingering fragrance of oils or the sheen of well-cared-for hair and skin, communicated wealth, attention, and care. In this way, bathing habits were not merely functional but a sophisticated element of social strategy, carefully calibrated to influence perception. The social function of these practices also intersected with moral and cultural expectations. Excessive indulgence in baths or scents could be criticized as vanity or decadence, while neglect might suggest carelessness or poor upbringing. Nobles navigated this delicate balance, using bathing as a means to reinforce both personal identity and social legitimacy. The combination of moderation, elegance, and sensory refinement created a coherent system in which hygiene, fashion, and social signaling were inseparable. Attendants were central to maintaining this balance. Their expertise ensured that every detail from oil application to towel placement was executed flawlessly, preserving both comfort and appearance. The careful choreography of service reflected an understanding of both sensory pleasure and visual impression. Through their skill, attendants enabled nobles to embody ideals of elegance, hygiene, and refinement, reinforcing the social and personal significance of bathing. Even objects within the bathing environment contributed to identity and display. Bowls, pitchers, tubs, and towels were chosen not merely for practicality but for aesthetic appeal. Polished metals reflected light, embroidered linens added texture and luxury, and fragrant oils elevated both sensory and symbolic dimensions. These elements transformed the bathing chamber into a curated stage on which personal identity was performed and reinforced with every gesture. Noble bathing habits also reflected seasonal and contextual awareness. Clothing, hair, and fragrance choices adapted to climate, ceremonial timing, and social expectations. Summer bathing might allow for more elaborate rituals and fragrant layering, while winter practices emphasized warmth, oil application, and subtle scent. Even within the privacy of the chamber, these adjustments reinforced a coherent sense of self, attentive to both environment and social norms. Through these carefully orchestrated routines, medieval nobles crafted a holistic identity that integrated hygiene, fashion, and social positioning. Every aspect, from the selection of fragrances to the arrangement of towels, from partial washing to ceremonial immersion, served multiple purposes. Physical comfort, aesthetic refinement, and social signaling merged, creating a sophisticated practice that conveyed both personal and cultural values. Bathing became a deliberate articulation of taste, discipline, and status, transforming an intimate act into a comprehensive expression of identity. As your mind envisions this world, imagine the gentle glow of candlelight reflecting off polished metal pitchers, the soft rustle of embroidered towels, and the faint lingering scent of lavender or rose in the air. Picture attendants moving with quiet precision, oils and powders applied with expert care, and the subtle shimmer of oiled hair catching the light. Sense the harmony of these elements, how every touch, fragrance, and placement communicates refinement, social understanding, and personal elegance. The bath is both sanctuary and stage, private ritual and expression of identity. Through fashion, display, and personal grooming, medieval nobles transformed the act of bathing into a medium of self-expression and social sophistication. Hygiene, scent, clothing, and ceremonial care intersected with status, taste, and cultural expectation, creating practices that were coherent, intentional, and deeply human. What may appear peculiar or extravagant to modern eyes was in fact a highly refined system of identity management, sensory engagement, and social artistry. In the following sections, we will explore the intersection of bathing and luxury products, including rare oils, exotic perfumes, and cosmetic additions, and how these further enhanced both hygiene and personal expression, revealing the full depth and sophistication of medieval noble bathing habits. For medieval nobles, bathing was not simply a matter of water and soap. It was an entry into a world of luxury products and exotic perfumes, each chosen to enhance hygiene, comfort, and social distinction. The sensory richness of these materials was central to the experience, creating layers of fragrance, texture, and visual appeal that transformed a simple bath into a deliberate act of indulgence. Oils, powders, and rare aromatic substances were carefully selected not only for their pleasant scents, but also for their perceived therapeutic and symbolic qualities. Every product contributed to the noble's health, elegance, and personal narrative. Essential oils were a cornerstone of this luxurious bathing practice. Lavender, rosemary, and rose were common, infused directly into bath water or applied to the skin. Their fragrances provided a subtle, lingering aroma, masking odors while soothing both body and mind. More exotic oils, imported from distant lands, were highly prized for their rarity and complexity. Jasmine, ambergris, and musk added layers of sensuality, creating signature scents that communicated refinement and access to elite trade networks. The careful combination of these fragrances reflected personal taste, status, and an understanding of olfactory artistry. Powders were equally important. Finely ground herbs, flowers, or mineral substances were applied to the skin and hair, absorbing excess moisture, protecting delicate tissues, and extending the longevity of fragrance. These powders also functioned as markers of care and sophistication. Their delicate application, texture, and scent signaled both discipline and artistry. The act of dusting the body or hair was itself ritualized, often performed by attendants who understood the precise amount, placement, and technique required to achieve the desired effect. Perfumes were integrated seamlessly into every stage of the bathing experience. Attendants might scent cloths used to dry the body, sprinkle petals on the water's surface, or create ambient fragrance in the chamber by burning incense. These methods created a multi-sensory environment in which the air, water, and objects surrounding the bather were infused with carefully orchestrated aromas. The result was not only a physical cleansing but an immersive, luxurious experience that elevated both body and mind. The use of exotic and imported materials also reflected the social ambitions and networks of the noble household. Spices and oils from the Middle East, Asia, and North Africa were rare and expensive, signaling wealth and access to international trade. The deliberate selection of these materials communicated cultural sophistication and connoisseurship, demonstrating the nobles' engagement with broader currents of commerce, taste, and refinement. Each choice, from the simplest lavender infusion to a complex blend of rare fragrances, was both practical and symbolic. Application techniques were as refined as the materials themselves. Oils were warmed before use to enhance absorption, then massaged gently into the skin. Powders were sifted carefully and distributed evenly to create a subtle, enduring effect. Attendants moved with precision, ensuring that every drop, pinch, and dab contributed to comfort, hygiene, and aesthetic effect. Even the timing of application was deliberate. Some oils were applied before bathing to protect and condition, others afterward to maintain fragrance and softness. This choreography transformed each bath into a carefully guided sensory journey. Bathing chambers themselves were adapted to enhance the effectiveness of luxury products. Wooden tubs were lined with cloths or petals, metal basins reflected light and fragrance, and heated stones or vessels helped maintain water temperature. The arrangement of objects and fragrances was orchestrated to maximize sensory impact, creating a calm, immersive environment that heightened both pleasure and effectiveness. In this way, the environment, tools, and products worked together to create an integrated bathing ritual that engaged sight, touch, and smell. Beyond olfactory delight, some luxury products were believed to have therapeutic or protective qualities. Herbal oils and powders were thought to strengthen the skin, fortify the body against disease, and preserve youthfulness. Exotic fragrances sometimes carried symbolic or spiritual significance, used to ward off evil or reinforce social prestige. Nobles, guided by medical and cultural beliefs, integrated these materials thoughtfully, ensuring that indulgence and health were inseparable. The careful application of luxury products reflected a sophisticated understanding of both body and mind, combining sensory pleasure, aesthetic sophistication, and practical benefit. The visual effect of luxury products was also important. Oils imparted a subtle sheen to the skin, powders added a delicate finish, and petals or aromatic elements created a visually harmonious environment. These visual cues complemented fragrance, texture, and temperature, forming a complete sensory tableau. Attendants ensured that every aspect was arranged with precision, creating an appearance of controlled elegance and refined taste. In this way, bathing became a fully orchestrated aesthetic experience, one that combined hygiene, artistry, and social signaling. Luxury products were often reserved for particular occasions. Festivals, ceremonies, and visits from dignitaries called for heightened attention to fragrance, application, and presentation. Even everyday bathing could involve careful layering of oils, powders, and scented cloths, though the most exotic or complex products might be saved for special events. This deliberate distinction reinforced both hierarchy and ritual, ensuring that each act of bathing communicated both practicality and social meaning. The use of fragrances and exotic products also created lasting memory. Nobles emerged from their baths enveloped in carefully curated scent, soft textures, and visual refinement. The lingering aroma, gentle sheen of oiled skin, and subtle comfort of scented cloths were cues to both self-perception and social observation. This extended the impact of the bath beyond the chamber itself, allowing the noble to carry an aura of cleanliness, refinement, and sophistication into daily life and social interaction. Imagine the calm of this environment, the soft warmth of the water, the gentle weight of scented oils on the skin, the faint lingering aroma of petals and exotic spices. Hear the quiet movements of attendants, the soft splash of water, and the delicate rustle of cloth. See the glow of polished metal vessels, the floating petals, and the sheen of oiled skin. Feel the deliberate rhythm of ritual, the measured application of powders, and the layering of fragrance, creating a multi-sensory sanctuary. Each element is harmonized, producing a serene, immersive experience that embodies luxury, hygiene, and social sophistication. Through these carefully selected products and meticulous techniques, medieval nobles transformed the act of bathing into a deliberate, luxurious, and meaningful ritual. What might appear as indulgence or excess to modern eyes was in fact a carefully calibrated system, combining hygiene, health, aesthetic refinement, and social signaling. The choice, application, and environment of luxury products ensured that each bath engaged the senses, reinforced status, and maintained both comfort and cultural sophistication. As we continue, the next sections will explore how bathing intersected with spiritual beliefs, ceremonial purification, and symbolic expression, revealing the deeper dimensions of medieval noble hygiene. By examining these practices, we uncover the complexity, intentionality, and artistry that defined every element of the bathing ritual, demonstrating that what may seem strange or elaborate was in fact a coherent system of care, status, and sensory mastery.
For medieval nobles, bathing extended beyond physical hygiene. It was also deeply intertwined with spiritual and symbolic purification. Water, oils, and fragrance were not merely cleansing agents, but carriers of meaning, ritual, and intention. Immersion in a bath could signify moral and spiritual renewal, a temporary retreat from the burdens of court life, and a deliberate preparation for public or ceremonial presence. In a world where faith and ritual infused daily life, the act of bathing carried layers of personal and cultural significance, transforming hygiene into an experience of contemplation, reflection, and symbolic cleansing. The concept of spiritual purification was embedded in both religious and cultural frameworks. Water was often seen as a medium of renewal, washing away not only physical dirt, but also spiritual impurities. Oils and scented substances carried symbolic weight as well, representing refinement, protection, and divine favor. Nobles approached the bath as a form of ritual preparation, aligning body, mind, and spirit before prayers, ceremonies, or social appearances. In this context, hygiene was inseparable from virtue, and careful bathing became a form of moral discipline as much as physical care. Ceremonial baths were often timed to coincide with religious or social observances. Weddings, christenings, or festive days might involve carefully prepared immersion in scented water, the use of fragrant oils, and the assistance of attendants to ensure both comfort and symbolic accuracy. These rituals allowed nobles to express piety, refinement, and social propriety simultaneously. The preparation, execution, and aftermath of bathing were infused with significance. Each scent, gesture, and object was part of a deliberate choreography, connecting hygiene, spirituality, and social performance. Attendants played a crucial role in guiding these symbolic practices. They applied oils and powders in ways that respected ritual significance, managed water temperature to maintain comfort and continuity, and ensured that the nobles' movements adhered to ceremonial precision. Even the choice of fragrances could convey symbolic meaning. Lavender might suggest purity, rose signify beauty and devotion, while other herbs or spices indicated health, protection, or prosperity. The bath became a collaborative space, combining guidance, sensory experience, and spiritual intention. Partial washes and selective immersion were also imbued with symbolic meaning. Cleansing hands, face, and feet could represent humility, attentiveness, and readiness to engage in public or spiritual duties. The act of touching and anointing with scented oils reinforced this symbolism, transforming routine hygiene into a ritual of attentiveness, grace, and moral preparation. Every movement, though subtle, carried layers of significance, aligning personal care with broader cultural and spiritual ideals. The layering of fragrance, water, and oils enhanced both sensory pleasure and symbolic depth. Nobles emerged from their baths not only physically refreshed, but also mentally and spiritually attuned. The scent lingering on the skin, the gentle warmth of oiled and powdered surfaces, and the overall feeling of completeness reinforced a sense of renewal. In this way, bathing bridged the physical and metaphysical, creating a holistic experience in which body and spirit were cared for simultaneously. Water was central to the symbolism of purification. Warm baths encouraged relaxation and introspection, allowing the bather to experience a gentle retreat from external pressures. The flow of water over the skin represented both cleansing and transformation, a daily or occasional reminder of the interplay between physical care and spiritual alignment. Even in partial or seasonal baths, water served as a medium of ritualized care, reinforcing the connection between cleanliness, virtue, and intentionality. The ceremonial use of oils, powders, and scents further reinforced these spiritual dimensions. Scented oils, carefully chosen for both fragrance and symbolic meaning, were applied to the body in measured, deliberate gestures. Powders served not only practical purposes, but also enhanced the sense of ritual and refinement. Attendants ensured that every detail, from the selection of materials to their precise application, was aligned with both comfort and cultural significance. The bath, therefore, became a space where the ordinary met the extraordinary, blending everyday hygiene with layered symbolic meaning. Bathing rituals also offered a form of psychological and emotional purification. The sensory immersion, the warmth of water, the texture of towels, the fragrance of oils, calmed the mind and invited reflection. Nobles could pause from the constant demands of status, diplomacy, and duty, entering a space where care, luxury, and symbolism intersected. This dimension of self-care fostered mindfulness, composure, and a subtle form of moral alignment, reinforcing the connection between body, mind, and social responsibility. Seasonal adjustments in bathing rituals carried symbolic as well as practical significance. Warm summer baths allowed for prolonged immersion and elaborate use of fragrant materials, reinforcing vitality, energy, and renewal. Winter practices, emphasizing oils, powders, and partial washing, symbolized prudence, moderation, and adaptation to circumstance. Even the timing of baths, whether aligned with morning prayers, evening reflection, or ceremonial preparation, enhanced their symbolic impact, reinforcing both personal discipline and social awareness. Imagine the gentle aroma of rose and lavender filling a softly lit chamber, the warm water enveloping the body, and the attendant's careful hands guiding oils and powders. Picture the noble immersed not only in water but in intention, reflection, and sensory awareness. Every detail, the temperature of the bath, the rhythm of gestures, the layering of scent contributes to a profound sense of purification, preparing body, mind, and spirit for the day, ceremony, or evening ahead. The bath becomes sanctuary, theater, and ritual combined. In these practices, hygiene and symbolism were inseparable. What may seem to modern eyes like elaborate or unusual rituals was, in fact, a carefully structured system of care, status, and spiritual alignment. Nobles cultivated an environment in which every object, scent, and movement reinforced both health and meaning, creating a harmonious experience that nurtured body, mind, and social identity simultaneously. The bath was a locus where luxury, ritual, and contemplation coexisted, demonstrating the depth and intentionality of medieval noble hygiene. Through spiritual and symbolic purification, we see that medieval bathing was not solely about cleanliness. It was about alignment with social expectation, moral ideals, and personal refinement. Each bath offered a moment of renewal, reflection, and self-expression, transforming daily hygiene into an immersive, contemplative, and profoundly human practice. The rituals of scent, water, oils, and attentive service formed a coherent system in which body and spirit were simultaneously cared for, elevated, and expressed. As we continue, the next sections will explore the fascinating interplay of public perception, etiquette, and the curious social norms surrounding noble bathing habits, revealing how hygiene intersected with reputation, observation, and societal expectation. By understanding these layers, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexity, intentionality, and artistry embedded in every aspect of medieval noble bathing.
In the world of medieval nobility, bathing was never purely private. It existed within a network of social expectations, observation, and etiquette. Even acts that might appear solitary were imbued with considerations of propriety, hierarchy, and impression. Attendants, family members, and visiting dignitaries were all aware, explicitly or subtly, of the nobles' bathing rituals, and the meticulous execution of these practices reflected both discipline and social intelligence. Bathing was an opportunity to signal refinement, taste, and decorum, demonstrating that personal hygiene could coexist with ritual luxury and social awareness. The presence of attendants was central to social etiquette. Noble baths were rarely solitary experiences. Servants were tasked not only with practical assistance, but also with the careful management of propriety. Draping towels, preparing heated water, applying oils, and arranging scented cloths required precise choreography to ensure that the noble's comfort and dignity were preserved at all times. The timing, placement, and technique of every action were informed by social conventions, ensuring that the bath reinforced status, discipline, and grace rather than revealing vulnerability or disorder. Observation, whether formal or informal, shaped bathing habits. Nobles were aware that their rituals, while intimate, could be subject to scrutiny. Guests might glimpse signs of refinement, the soft sheen of oiled skin, the subtle fragrance of oils, the orderly arrangement of tools and towels. Even minor details, such as the careful application of powder or the selection of scents, communicated sophistication, composure, and control. Bathing became a microcosm of social performance, where every choice, gesture, and object could convey status and intention. Etiquette also governed the sequence and structure of bathing. Nobles followed established conventions for water temperature, timing, and the application of oils and fragrances. Partial baths were often used strategically, ensuring that the body appeared clean and fresh without excessive exposure. These practices reflected an understanding of both social expectation and practical comfort, a careful balance between luxury, hygiene, and decorum. The structured nature of these routines exemplifies how medieval bathing was deeply intertwined with social norms. Privacy, paradoxically, was a social construct. While the noble enjoyed moments of personal reflection and sensory immersion, attendants were always present, facilitating both physical care and the subtle enforcement of etiquette. Their presence ensured safety, comfort, and precision, while also reinforcing social hierarchy. The careful interplay of privacy and observation created an environment in which bathing was both intimate and socially meaningful, reflecting broader cultural values of discipline, refinement, and propriety. Fragrance played a crucial role in social signaling. Subtle, layered scents communicated attention to personal hygiene and aesthetic refinement, extending the noble's presence beyond the bath itself. Oils, powders, and scented cloths created a lingering impression, a silent demonstration of care, status, and cultural sophistication. The ability to maintain this sensory signature reinforced social perception, allowing the noble to exert influence and convey refinement, even in semi-private spaces. Ceremonial baths emphasized etiquette further. Weddings, feasts, or visits from high-ranking individuals required additional attention to detail. Water temperature, scent layering, and the arrangement of towels and cloths were meticulously planned to maintain comfort, beauty, and propriety. Attendants followed precise routines to ensure that every aspect of the bath adhered to expectations, creating a seamless integration of hygiene, ritual, and social signaling. These ceremonial considerations demonstrate that even seemingly private acts were governed by shared cultural norms and conscious presentation. Observation extended beyond attendants and guests to the broader realm of reputation. Stories of noble hygiene, preference for exotic oils, or meticulous grooming could circulate through social networks, enhancing prestige or inviting critique. Nobles were mindful of how their habits might be perceived, using bathing as a medium to reinforce social identity and cultural capital. Every fragrant cloth, polished pitcher, and carefully applied oil contributed to an ongoing dialogue about refinement, sophistication, and status within the court or noble community. The physical environment also reflected social etiquette. Baths were held in carefully prepared chambers, with warmed water, scented petals, polished utensils, and textiles arranged to maximize comfort and visual appeal. This environment demonstrated attention to detail, cultural knowledge, and wealth, communicating refinement without words. The thoughtful orchestration of space, materials, and attendants underscored the importance of etiquette, signaling to observers that the noble understood and could navigate the subtleties of elite culture. Timing and rhythm were key components of etiquette in bathing. Nobles often bathed at specific times of day to align with household routines, social schedules, or ceremonial obligations. Morning baths might prepare one for audiences or official duties, while evening routines facilitated relaxation, reflection, and sensory indulgence. Even within these temporal patterns, attention to decorum remained paramount. The precise order of washing, oiling, and powdering ensured that the noble emerged not only clean but composed, elegant, and socially attuned. Bathing etiquette also encompassed the training and behavior of attendants. These individuals were expected to act with discretion, sensitivity, and skill, ensuring that the noble's comfort and dignity were preserved while maintaining the flow of ritual. Their actions, whether adjusting towels, pouring water, or massaging oils, were guided by an understanding of both hygiene and social expectation. Through this attentive service, nobles were able to cultivate an environment in which sensory pleasure, comfort, and propriety existed harmoniously. Imagine this scene in quiet detail. The soft glow of candlelight reflects on polished metal pitchers, the gentle rustle of embroidered towels accompanies the subtle splash of warm water, and scented oils infuse the air with calm sophistication. Attendants move with precision and discretion, ensuring that every gesture aligns with social expectation while maximizing comfort and sensory pleasure. The noble, enveloped in warmth, scent and visual elegance, experiences a sense of controlled indulgence, refinement and mastery over both self and environment. Through these careful practices, medieval noble bathing transcended mere hygiene. It was an exercise in social intelligence, blending sensory experience, personal refinement and cultural expectation. Every choice, water temperature, fragrance selection, towel placement and sequence of washing, reflected a nuanced understanding of etiquette and observation, creating a layered immersive environment in which the body, mind and social perception were all meticulously attended to. Bathing became a medium of controlled display, subtle signaling, and deliberate artistry. Ultimately, social etiquette shaped the experience of medieval bathing in profound ways. It governed who was present, how attendants acted, what fragrances were chosen, and how the noble's actions were performed. It extended the influence of the bath beyond physical cleanliness, creating a space in which personal identity, refinement, and social perception intersected. The bath became a stage for controlled intentional display, an environment in which the noble demonstrated mastery over hygiene, luxury, and the complex rules of social life. As we continue, the next section will explore the decline of bathing habits, examining how social, medical, and cultural changes transformed the frequency, perception, and practice of hygiene among medieval nobles. By understanding this shift, we gain insight into the evolution of habits, beliefs, and the human relationship with water, cleanliness, and ritual. As the medieval period progressed, bathing habits among nobles began to change, influenced by evolving social, medical, and cultural perceptions. What had once been a celebrated ritual of luxury, hygiene, and sensory indulgence gradually shifted, shaped by new ideas about health, morality, and propriety. The frequency of baths decreased, and practices became more selective, often emphasizing partial washes, scented powders, and perfumes over full immersion. This transformation did not occur overnight, but unfolded gradually, reflecting complex interactions between belief systems, environmental factors, and social expectations. One major influence on the decline of frequent bathing was medical theory. Early modern European medicine increasingly emphasized the dangers of water exposure, cold, and excessive moisture. Physicians cautioned that full immersion could weaken the body, disrupt humoral balance, or open the skin to disease. These ideas, though sometimes inconsistent with prior practice, gained authority and shaped noble behavior. Bathing became a carefully moderated act, designed to cleanse without overexposing the body to perceived risks. The shift illustrates how medical advice, cultural interpretation, and daily habit intertwined, guiding choices that once had been largely aesthetic and ritualistic. Religious and moral attitudes also played a role. Some clergy associated indulgent bathing with vanity, sin, or moral laxity, emphasizing modesty and restraint. Nobles, mindful of reputation and social expectation, adapted their practices to reflect piety as well as refinement. Fragrant powders, oils, and partial washing offered a compromise, allowing nobles to maintain cleanliness, sensory pleasure, and social distinction while appearing morally disciplined. Bathing was no longer merely a ritual of indulgence but a negotiation between personal comfort, social visibility, and moral propriety. Environmental and practical factors further contributed to the decline. Heating large amounts of water, maintaining clean baths, and ensuring attendance availability were labor-intensive tasks. Noble households often adapted to constraints by reducing the frequency of full baths, relying instead on alternative methods such as sponging, powdered cloths, and perfumes to preserve freshness. These practices demonstrate the interplay between practicality, status, and sensory sophistication, as nobles sought efficient ways to maintain hygiene, elegance, and social identity despite changing circumstances. Despite these shifts, bathing remained a multi-sensory, socially significant practice, though it manifested differently than in earlier centuries. Emphasis shifted from long, elaborate rituals to shorter, selective processes that balanced comfort, fragrance, and appearance. Oils, powders, and scented cloths maintained sensory pleasure and social signaling, even as immersion became less frequent. The use of fragrance, sheen, and texture allowed nobles to navigate the tension between evolving perceptions of health, morality, and luxury, preserving the essence of refinement while adapting to new norms. Cultural narratives also influence perceptions of cleanliness. Stories, advice manuals, and moral treatises circulated ideas about the dangers or excesses of bathing, shaping behavior and expectation. Nobles internalized these messages, adjusting their routines to reflect cultural wisdom, societal critique, and emerging aesthetic ideals. Even as practices shifted, the careful orchestration of scent, texture, and appearance remained central, ensuring that noble identity and refinement persisted in altered form. Social observation continued to govern hygiene practices, albeit in modified ways. Attendants, family members, and visitors remained aware of bathing routines, and subtle cues, such as fragrance, sheen of skin, or use of scented powders, communicated refinement, status, and discipline. Nobles learned to balance private ritual with social signaling, navigating evolving norms while preserving comfort, elegance, and sensory satisfaction. The bath, though transformed, continued to function as a site of identity, performance, and personal expression. Partial washing, sponging, and the careful application of powders and perfumes became the dominant mode of hygiene. These practices allowed nobles to maintain the visual and olfactory markers of cleanliness, while reducing immersion in water, which was increasingly viewed as potentially harmful. Attendants played a crucial role, applying powders, oils, and scented cloths with skill and precision to preserve both comfort and appearance. In this way, nobles maintained continuity with earlier traditions, even as the form and frequency of bathing evolved. The role of luxury products persisted even amid declining immersion. Exotic oils, rare perfumes, and scented powders retained significance as markers of refinement, social status, and sensory pleasure. While baths became less frequent, the careful orchestration of fragrance, texture, and visual detail ensured that nobles continued to cultivate elegance and distinction. Even minimal contact with water or selective washing could be enhanced by these materials, preserving both aesthetic and social function. Imagine the atmosphere of a declining bathing ritual, a chamber filled with the muted glow of candlelight, the faint aroma of lavender or rose lingering in the air, and attendants carefully applying oils and powders with deliberate precision. The noble experiences comfort, refinement, and sensory engagement without the need for full immersion. Every gesture, the placement of a towel, the dusting of powder, the layering of fragrance demonstrates adaptation, intention, and continued attention to personal identity, even as traditional practices shift. Despite the decline in frequent bathing, the cultural memory of ritual and luxury persisted. Nobles continued to value cleanliness, sensory sophistication, and social signaling, adapting their routines to align with contemporary beliefs while preserving the elegance, refinement, and identity cultivated over generations. In essence, the bath became more selective, measured, and symbolic, emphasizing quality and intentionality over quantity and duration. The decline of bathing habits offers insight into the broader social, medical, and cultural transformations of the medieval and early modern periods. It reflects changing understandings of the body, health, morality, and luxury, as well as the ongoing negotiation between private ritual, sensory pleasure, and social expectation. Even as immersion became less frequent, nobles continued to engage with water, oils, powders, and fragrances to preserve identity, comfort, and refinement, demonstrating resilience, creativity, and adaptability in maintaining their traditions. In this context, hygiene was not abandoned but transformed. It evolved from a visually elaborate, multi-sensory immersion into a nuanced, selective, and highly symbolic practice. Nobles adapted to new norms while maintaining the essence of refinement, using fragrance, texture, and ritual gestures to convey status, sophistication, and personal care. The bath therefore remained a central, albeit reimagined, element of noble life, preserving its role as a medium of sensory engagement, social signaling, and personal expression. By exploring this shift, we gain insight into how cultural perceptions shape behavior, how medical and moral guidance influences daily life, and how noble identity is maintained even amid changing circumstances. The evolution of bathing habits demonstrates that what may seem peculiar or diminished to modern observers was, in fact, a deliberate, thoughtful adaptation, an enduring engagement with luxury, hygiene, and social sophistication. The bathing rituals of medieval nobles leave a lasting legacy that extends far beyond their historical moment. While modern practices differ significantly, the principles underlying these routines, careful attention to hygiene, the layering of sensory experience, and the integration of personal grooming with social signaling, resonate even today. Medieval baths were not simply functional, they were deliberate acts of self-expression, a fusion of comfort, aesthetics, and identity. By examining these practices, we uncover lessons about human ingenuity, sensory appreciation, and the ways culture shapes personal care. One of the most striking aspects of medieval bathing is the integration of sensory engagement into daily hygiene. Every bath was designed to appeal to sight, touch, and smell. Oils and powders imparted subtle textures, fragrances lingered long after immersion, and visual arrangements of vessels, linens, and petals created a harmonious environment. This multi-sensory approach elevated hygiene from mere routine to an immersive, pleasurable experience. Modern practices, while often focused on efficiency, can draw inspiration from this holistic approach, emphasizing mindfulness, ritual, and intentionality in self-care. The use of luxury products, exotic oils, and rare perfumes underscores the historical interplay between status, access, and personal expression. Nobles carefully selected materials to convey refinement, taste, and cultural sophistication. These choices reveal a sophisticated understanding of sensory symbolism, demonstrating that hygiene was intertwined with identity, perception, and social negotiation. Today, while access to luxury products is more democratized, the principle remains: personal care communicates values, personality, and attention to detail. The medieval emphasis on thoughtful selection and application offers a model for intentional, expressive grooming. Bathing also functioned as a form of social and moral education. Rituals were guided by etiquette, observation, and cultural norms, teaching nobles how to navigate hierarchy, display refinement, and balance privacy with social expectation. Attendants facilitated this education, providing guidance and skillful execution while maintaining discretion. Modern reflection on these dynamics encourages an appreciation for the ways daily routines communicate values, reinforce social cohesion, and cultivate self-discipline. Even seemingly private acts, such as hygiene, are embedded with layers of meaning and potential influence. The spiritual dimension of bathing illustrates the human desire to connect bodily care with inner life. Immersion, scented oils, and symbolic gestures offered nobles opportunities for contemplation, renewal, and alignment with personal or cultural ideals. This integration of physical and spiritual care highlights a timeless lesson: rituals surrounding the body can nurture mind, soul, and emotional well-being. In contemporary practice, the principle persists in mindfulness exercises, aromatherapy, and intentional self-care, demonstrating that historical wisdom can inform modern approaches to holistic wellness. Observation and social signaling played a central role in medieval hygiene, reminding us that personal habits are rarely purely private. The careful orchestration of scent, appearance, and ritualized behavior reflected both internal discipline and external communication. Even today, grooming and presentation influence perception, suggesting continuity in the ways humans express identity, manage impression, and engage socially. Medieval bathing teaches that care for the body is inseparable from engagement with community, culture, and relationships. The gradual decline of frequent bathing also offers insight into adaptability and cultural evolution. Nobles adjusted practices in response to changing medical, moral, and practical considerations, yet preserved core elements of refinement, sensory pleasure, and social signaling. This demonstrates a timeless lesson. Practices evolve, but underlying principles, care, attention, and expression, can endure. Modern hygiene, wellness, and self-care are similarly shaped by scientific understanding, cultural trends, and individual preference, reflecting an ongoing dialogue between tradition and innovation. Imagination allows us to re-experience the immersive atmosphere of these baths, the warm glow of candlelight on polished vessels, the gentle rustle of embroidered towels, the soft layering of scented oils, and the quiet attentiveness of skilled attendants. The sensory richness, deliberate pacing, and ritual precision create a sense of calm, elegance, and intentionality. Even today, such attention to detail, comfort, and sensory harmony can transform ordinary routines into moments of pleasure, reflection, and personal expression. Ultimately, medieval bathing emphasizes intentionality in all aspects of life. Each gesture, fragrance, and object was chosen with care, reinforcing comfort, social identity, and personal refinement. This principle can inform contemporary approaches to daily routines, reminding us that even practical acts like bathing are opportunities for creativity, mindfulness, and self-expression. By embracing deliberate practice, we honor the human desire for sensory engagement, aesthetic coherence, and meaningful ritual. In reflecting on the legacy of medieval bathing, we also see the enduring human pursuit of harmony between body, mind, and environment. Bathing was not simply functional but a carefully designed experience that nurtured well-being, social standing, and cultural sophistication. This holistic approach offers a lesson in balance. Care for oneself need not be separate from beauty, ritual, or sensory pleasure. Modern practices can draw inspiration from this integration, creating routines that satisfy both practical and emotional needs. The history of noble bathing reminds us that personal care is intertwined with culture, identity, and perception. Fragrance, texture, and visual arrangement communicated meaning as effectively as the act of washing itself. Even as techniques evolved or declined, the desire to maintain dignity, refinement, and comfort endured. This continuity suggests that human values around cleanliness, elegance, and sensory engagement are remarkably resilient, offering insight into both historical life and contemporary self-expression. In conclusion, the baths of medieval nobles exemplify the richness and intentionality that human beings can bring to daily rituals. From sensory immersion to social signaling, spiritual reflection, and adaptation to changing norms, these practices reveal a sophisticated understanding of the body, mind, and society. They invite modern observers to reconsider hygiene as a multidimensional experience, offering lessons in mindfulness, aesthetics, personal identity, and cultural awareness. By exploring these historical practices, we gain perspective on how ordinary acts can be transformed into deliberate, meaningful, and enriching rituals that nurture comfort, refinement, and well-being.